There's this famous thought experiment in philosophy known as the Ship of Theseus, and it goes like this. You have a ship that's gradually being repaired over time. Like if we're unhappy, we could just decide to be happy, or if we dislike our neighbor, we could just decide to love them. But obviously those things aren't that easy to change, so what's going on here? Why does the Ship of Theseus matter today? There's actually another asset that very few people have access to, contemporary art. That depends on who you ask. The classic response is that it doesn't matter that the individual planks are different. They're the ones that determine how we think and feel and what we do. What happens if our brains change in such a way that we're no longer the same person? We wouldn't be able to adapt to the world around us. Our brains are optimized for change. They're always adapting to new information, new experiences, and new environments. You see, as we get older, our brains do change. We do lose our memory. We do become a little slower. But if we can keep learning, if we can keep challenging ourselves, then we can keep growing. And that's something worth striving for. It means that we don't have to just accept the fact that we're getting older. We can embrace it. We can embrace the changes that come with age, because they also come with wisdom, with experience, and with perspective. And that's what allows us to evolve as human beings. But that means that eventually we will change so much that we won't recognize ourselves anymore. Remember that you're not the same person you were yesterday, and you never will be. So stay tuned if you want to see that. And until then, I'll see you next week. And that's not a bad thing. In fact, it's something to celebrate because it means that you have the potential to become someone better. And that's both terrifying and exciting because it means that we have the potential to become someone better. Well, it turns out that that does happen. In a disease called dementia, the brain physically changes in such a way that our sense of self disappears. I mean, you're just a collection of cells that are slowly degrading over time. So what's the point? Well, I think the point is that while our brains are always changing, we have some control over what those changes look like. Our brains are shaped by our experiences, but we also shape our experiences. We can't just decide to be happy all the time, but we can decide to pursue happiness. And in the process of pursuing happiness, we'll change. We'll change the way that we think, and the way that we behave, and the way that we interact with the world around us. And those changes can ripple out into the world, affecting other people and making the world a better place. At first, we might forget where we put things, or we might misplace items, but over time, these symptoms get worse. As the disease progresses, we lose our ability to perform routine tasks. We lose our sense of personal identity, and eventually we lose our memories until all that's left is the shell of our former selves. So in these cases, we do seem to change over time. But that raises an even more interesting question. Do we actually want to remain the same person forever? I mean, if we take a step back, we can see that our brains are always changing. So in some sense, we're always changing. And while that might sound scary, it's actually a good thing. And while our behavior is influenced by our genes, it's ultimately up to our brains to decide how to use that genetic information. So when we're talking about what makes us us, we should probably talk about our brains. So is the Ship of Theseus still itself when every plank has been replaced? Yes. And is the person still themselves when every cell has been replaced? Also yes. So what's changed? Well, nothing. That's not what it feels like. When we look at ourselves, we don't feel like we're these physical things that are slowly degrading over time. We feel like we're these mental things that are experiencing the world around us, and that feeling is caused by our brains. But what exactly is that thing that our brains are doing? Well, it's hard to say, because as it turns out, there isn't a specific region in the brain that corresponds to our sense of self. Instead, it looks like our sense of self emerges from the interactions between multiple regions in our brain. But regardless of where it comes from, we do seem to have this sense that we're the same person over time. And that leads us to some interesting questions. The form and function of the ship are the same, so it's still the same thing. But that response doesn't really make sense because planks aren't just parts of the ship. They're literally what makes the ship a ship. So that definition is circular. Another way of thinking about it is that the ship is made of those particular planks. So replacing them with any other planks would make it a different thing. But then that leaves us with the question of what makes us us? What makes you you? Because like the Ship of Theseus, we're also constantly changing. Every day your body replaces millions of cells, and over time those cells replace the old ones until every single cell in your body has been replaced. In fact, you could argue that everything about you is constantly changing. Your thoughts are different. Your experiences are different. Even the way that you perceive the world around you is different, because your senses are different. So again, the question is, what makes you you? And this is where things get interesting because, as it turns out, we don't actually experience ourselves as the Ship of Theseus. We don't experience ourselves as a collection of cells or thoughts or experiences. We experience ourselves as unified individuals. We feel like we're the same person yesterday, today, and tomorrow. But why is that? Well, the traditional answer is that we have a soul. And maybe that's true. I think there's something else that we can add to the conversation here, and that's our brain. Now, even though contemporary art might seem like a niche market, contemporary art prices outpaced the S&P 500 total return by 164%. Between 1995 and 2021, the only problem is that until recently, investing in art was extremely hard to do. You had to know which artists were going to be valuable, purchase their work, hang on to it for years, and then sell it at the right time. But now, thanks to Masterworks, you can invest in contemporary art without ever having to buy or sell anything yourself. Masterworks buys expensive paintings from contemporary artists, securitizes them, then sells shares of those paintings to investors like you. All you need to do is pick the artwork you want to invest in and then sit back while the artwork appreciates. So far, Masterworks has sold 3 paintings, with one returning over 30 net IRR to investors and the other 2 returning over 20 net IRR to investors. With Masterworks, you can diversify your portfolio and invest in contemporary art in minutes instead of decades. And the best part is that as a viewer of this channel, you can skip the waitlist and start investing in art today by clicking the link down in the description. What can it tell us about how we experience pleasure? And can we use that to create more pleasure in our own lives? Well, let's jump in. And as it gets repaired, the old planks of wood are being replaced with new ones until eventually every single plank has been replaced. So is it still the same ship? In fact, at the end of this video, I'll talk about why that's a bad idea. But there is something that I think we can learn from this. And before I get to that lesson, I want to tell you about the sponsor of today's video, Masterworks. This has been a problem for philosophers for ages, because it seems to suggest that our identity is not fixed. It can change over time. And if we can change our identity, then there's no reason we can't change other aspects of ourselves. Okay, so first off, let me be clear that I am not trying to say that we can just choose to be happy all the time. So here's the deal. While most wealthy people invest their money in things like property and stocks, an investment that takes a long time and requires a lot of knowledge. Okay, now let's get back to the Ship of Theseus. So what's the answer here? Is the ship still the same thing? Okay, so here's what I mean. If we take a step back, we can see that our brains are the ones that cause us to behave in certain ways. For example, if we're the same person today as we were yesterday, does that mean that we always will be? You see, if we didn't change over time, we wouldn't be able to learn. We wouldn't be able to grow. But you might be thinking, how could I ever become someone better? But that's not the only reason why this matters. It also matters because it gives us hope. So the next time you're faced with a challenge, the next time you feel like you're not making progress, remember the Ship of Theseus. I've been thinking a lot about this topic lately, because I'm working on a project that is due to come out later this year.